In France, where sports are a very special passion, 1992 has become a vintage year. It began at the end of '91, when Guy Forget and Henri Leconte led a shocking upset of the heavily favored USA, and Yannick Noah's crew began the year as Davis Cup champions. In February, the tiny alpine village of Albertville stepped into the world spotlight as host to the Winter Olympic Games. Just last month, French Open tennis returned to Paris. Men's champion Jim Courier thanked the crowd in French, and Gallic buttons burst with pride. 2 weeks ago, the 24 Hours of Le Mans was supposed to be a French farce. It turned out to be one of the best races ever, and when French Peugeots finished first and third, celebrations broke out from Normandy to the Côte d'Azur. Now it is summer, the high holy days for the French sports fan. Time for the Tour de France, the world's most grueling sporting event. Of the 16 motor races spanning the globe that make up the Grand Prix season, 7 are complete. The teams have returned to Europe to begin a string of 7 more that will likely decide the world driving champion. Today, round 8 brings them to Magny-Cours in the French Loire Valley. A year ago, the race was dominated by England's Nigel Mansell, the first win in what would eventually become a string of 3 straight, a hat trick that landed Mansell in the thick of the World Championship fight. 3 weeks ago in Montreal, Mansell's historic run of 6 straight poles and as many points finishes was broken at the Canadian Grand Prix. Defending world champion Ayrton Senna brought his McLaren Honda to the front at the first corner, forcing Mansell to play a waiting game. 15 laps later, Mansell could wait no longer, but his attempt to pass Senna led to a frightening spin, and Mansell's race was finished. His walk back to the pits was punctuated by a furious exchange with Senna's crew. Mansell blamed Senna for the crash, only to find no one would agree with him. Ironically, Senna's chance to make up ground on Mansell in the championship ended a few laps later with mechanical problems. At the finish, the happiest man in the pit lane was Senna's teammate Gerhard Berger, his first victory of the year. Today, the French sporting year reaches its climax as Magny-Cours hosts the drama and the excitement of the Formula One's World Driving Championship. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. Just 3 hours' drive south of Paris lies some of the most beautiful countryside in all of France, the Loire Valley, home to both the French president and premier, so no surprise that it should also quickly become the home of France's greatest motor racing event, round 8 in the World Driving Championship, the Grand Prix of France. Hello once again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. This is one of the most wonderful areas in all of Europe. Unfortunately, this is not the most wonderful weekend to be here. We've had on and off showers throughout practice and qualifying, and the weather might well be the deciding factor in today's Grand Prix. But the real problems in France this weekend are man-made. Virtually every major intersection in the country this weekend is jammed with huge tractor trailers as French truckers display their protest over new traffic safety laws. As a result, many of the teams in this paddock are doing without essential supplies, and one entire team, Andrea Moto Formula from Italy, is not here at all. Officials have been huddling, trying to come up with contingency plans to get us all out of here and on to Great Britain for next weekend's Grand Prix, but that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. With me to add order to all the chaos here this weekend in France, the ESPN Formula One analyst, David Hobbs. David, we'll end the first half of the season the way we began it, Williams-Renault up front.
Yep, another man-made problem, I'm afraid, for Ayrton Senna, who's 1.4 seconds slower than Nigel Mansell, who's got the pole. Now, I think Senna felt that after the McLaren Hondas had won the last 2 races, even though he was very realistic about their wins, felt they were just a little bit lucky, I think that he probably hoped in his heart of hearts that they were coming back on stream, but it doesn't look as if it's the case. And this morning in the damp, when of course Ayrton Senna normally shines, he was about 3.5 seconds slower than Nigel Mansell, so he's not holding out much hope for rain either to help him out. And as you know, of course, the points at the moment are just horrible for McLaren Honda, because Nigel Mansell, with 58 points, has got twice as many points as next guy, which is his own teammate Riccardo Patrese.
A look at the constructors' point shows Williams-Renault with the kind of lead you'd expect given the sort of season it's been thus far. Incidentally, here in France, it is not Williams-Renault, it is Renault-Williams. The French are intensely proud of their Grand Prix racing, but their top-ranked driver, Jean Alesi, will start 6th today. Now let's get more from pit lane with the third member of our Grand Prix broadcast team. Here's Andrew Marriott.
Bob, a lot of confidence in the Williams pit. Mansell, of course, fastest in all 4 practice sessions, and then again in the wet morning warm-up. They really are confident down here. I think Mansell is back on that roll. Well, at the other end of the grid, the 2 Brabhams failed to make it again. Chris Fittipaldi had an accident, damaged a vertebrae. He's going to be out for a couple of races. And then Paul Belmondo, the son of the French actor, he also failed to make the grid. But it looks as if we're going to have a superb race, but expect to see Mansell out in front. Bob?
Thank you, Andrew. Here in France, June showers have given way to July flowers. But the quiet, especially at Magny-Cours, is about to be broken. Green light coming up next. In the Loire Valley, dotted with magnificent chateaux, and where grapes are ripening on the vines with the promise of great vintages to come. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of France is brought to you by Acura Automobiles. Experience precision-crafted performance. And by Anheuser-Busch, who proudly brings you Family Talk. Let's stop underage drinking before it starts. Live in Magny-Cours, the 26 cars being prepared on the grid to be sent on their way for the formation lap and then the standing start for round 8 of the Formula One World Driving Championship. Mechanics beginning to clear away equipment. Now let's take a look at the way they'll line up for today's race. On the pole for the 7th time in 8 races, Nigel Mansell of Great Britain in the Williams-Renault with a record lap averaging 128 miles an hour and quickest in this morning's damp warm-up. Next to him on row 1, Riccardo Patrese of Italy in the 2nd Williams-Renault, just 3rd in the warm-up, 2nd in points coming in. Row 2 will be Ayrton Senna of Brazil in the McLaren Honda, just 6th in the morning warm-up. Next to him, his teammate from Austria, Gerhard Berger, 7th in the warm-up. The Honda engines with mechanical problems this weekend. Row 3 will be Michael Schumacher of Germany in the Benetton Ford, just 8th in the warm-up. Next to him, the Ferrari of the hope of all France, Jean Alesi, 2nd in the warm-up this morning. On row 4 will be Martin Brundle of Great Britain in the Benetton. Next to him, the Ferrari of Ivan Capelli of Italy. On row 5, carrying the French Racing Blue of Ligier, Terry Boutsen of Belgium and Eric Comas of France. All Lotus Ford on row 6, Mika Hakkinen of Finland and Great Britain's Johnny Herbert. Row 7 will be Bertrand Gastro and Michele Alboreto. Row 8, Aguri Suzuki and Gianni Morbidelli. J.J. Leto and Ukio Katayama on row 9. Row 10, Andre de Cesaris and Stefano Modena. Carl Wendlinger, after a big crash Saturday, is on row 11 next to Olivier Griard of France. Gabriele Tarquini and Maurizio Gugelmin on row 12. And row 13, Pierluigi Martini of Italy and Andrea Chiesa of Switzerland. Here a look at the particulars of today's race. Our weather is cool and breezy. There are some patches of blue sky overhead, but we've had 2 heavy showers during the day between the warm-up and this point. Nigel Mansell, the defending champion of the race, a good omen. 18 times in the 42-year history of the World Championship, the winner in France has gone on to win the world title. Out on the racetrack, the cars continue to circulate. They will come around, stop in position, and then get the green light that will send them on their way. Here's a look at the course in profile. Take a look at the far right side. That hairpin has been widened a little bit to answer driver complaints that there is not enough room to pass anywhere on the track. As a result, the course has been shortened from 2.7 to 2.6 miles, and they will run 72 laps today. David?
Well, it's a very interesting course. It's a very, very physical course. 10 turns, as you've already said, 2.6 miles. The drivers here work extremely hard. Only that one real place to overtake. Here we are on board with Michael Schumacher on his warm-up lap. This turn here is the Chateau d'Eau waterhouse coming down to the chicane before the start-finish. There's a sharp right-hander onto the start-finish. A lot of corners here, but not very many of them. Here we are coming down to that last chicane. A very quick right and left flick, which they'll take in second gear probably. Hang on to second. until they turn sharp right, pull up onto the pit straight. Hard on gearboxes, of course. This is where the Ferraris, the Williams, and now, of course, the McLaren Hondas have a bit of an advantage with those semi-automatic gearboxes.
Nigel Mansell leads the field onto the starting grid. Let's get down to Andrew Marriott in the pits quickly.
Yes, well, everyone's on dries, Bob. We expect scheduled pit stops around lap 25, lap 26, and that's if the rain doesn't come before and the temperatures drop 3 or 4 degrees. Back to you for the start.
I'd say there's a very good chance of rain, and if there is rain, then it changes everything when it comes to tire selection. Ferraris and Benettons will be carrying our onboard cameras today. Riding with Michael Schumacher, you see the numbers on the tearaway shields on his helmet visor. When the field has come to a stop, the red light will flash, then the green, and we'll be on our way. Turn up the volume, listen to the engines, enjoy the start. Scrambling at the back of the field. The 2 Williams cars away quickly. Riccardo Patrese leaps into the lead.
Nigel made a very tidy start, and it looks as if Gerhard Berger got past his teammate Ayrton Senna. I believe that's Berger running in 3rd spot now. Can't quite tell from that distance. Streaming through that long Estoril corner, there are the 2 Ligiers together. As you said earlier, these cars line up. There's Michael Schumacher having a go around the outside. Schumacher could be a very, very serious threat to the McLaren Hondas in this race.
Whoa! First turn, and we have a big crash.
Michael
Schumacher has made contact with one of the McLaren. Whoa! Further back in the pack, we've got cars all over the racetrack.
That's the Sassol Jordans, one of those cars. There's the Tyrrells.
Schumacher and Senna got it started. Now Schumacher is on his way once again. Senna is parked. Looks like one of the Venturi Lamborghinis. On board with Michael Schumacher. Senna comes across his bows. They touch left front to right rear and spin away.
Well, it looks as if Schumacher had in fact managed to out-drag Senna down to the hairpin, was on the inside of him, and Senna decides to go around the outside. This is the picture of the start again.
Moving around to the back of the pack, there's Schumacher emerging from behind the red and white McLaren. He'll come down the left side. Senna will come across. Patrese, Mansell, and Berger through first. Contact right there. Martin Brundle ducking underneath. And then chaos breaks out behind them. One more look. Schumacher, that's Martin Brundle ducking underneath. Then the Lotuses, the Ferrari, the 2
Ligiers coming through there. And Johnny Herbert in the Lotus.
One of the March cars, one of the aqua-colored March cars in the back was involved in all of that, but the race continues. The hairpin is clear. Schumacher is in the pits.
Who knows?
Off camera, come to me. Well, down here, they are struggling to get the nose off Michael Schumacher's car. There are no wings on it at all. Everything else on the car looks in good shape. So expect to see Schumacher into the race. Now the new nose is on. The old nose just landed at my feet. And, well, Schumacher, a big disadvantage to make up. Oliver Griard we also saw in the pits. Back to you, Bob.
Well, the problem in these situations is always whether the mounting points on the nose of that car were damaged in the accident. We saw them struggling with it. Meanwhile, up front, Riccardo Patrese with a quick 2 or 3 car length lead over Nigel Mansell.
And Gerhard Berger hanging on well there in the first of the McLaren Hondas. And right behind him is, of course, Martin Brundle in the remaining Schumacher. And there's Alesi in the Ferrari.
Then one of the Lotus cars. There is Schumacher on his way. Looks like one of the safety cars moving up the pit lane in front of him, and it is. Now, this would not be a pace car. We expect to see a pace car in Formula One no earlier than next week in Britain. There is Ayrton Senna. What a blow for him. He won in Monaco 2 races back. He had a chance to make up big ground in Montreal, but the car let him down. Now he has collided with this man, Michael Schumacher, and he is out.
So that's Senna's chances of a world championship, I should say, well and truly shot down now. Riccardo Patrese leading his teammate Nigel Mansell, but I imagine it's only a matter of time before Nigel pulls around him.
We asked
right now is a good point.
We asked Frank Williams before the race if there were any team orders. Nigel, the runaway leader for the championship. Whoa, he put the wheel off.
Put a wheel right off the road there.
Would Patrese be ordered to let Nigel through in the event he were out in front? Frank Williams says no. We have no team orders. If Riccardo can win the race he should go ahead and do it.
Boy, oh boy, Gerhard Berger is really getting on with the program here.
Great action in the opening laps of the French Grand Prix, and we'll be back for more. Back in France, let's take another look at what happened in the hairpin, the Adelaide hairpin on the very first lap of this race. Ayrton Senna in the red and white McLaren touched wheels with Michael Schumacher. Both cars spun out. Schumacher got back to the pits for a new nose section, but Senna is out of this race, and as David mentioned, his chances of a possible fourth world championship dimming by the week. Leading,
there you see back at the scene of the crime, that's the hairpin there. Both Williamses have now got into their stride and put a lot of daylight between himself and Gerhard Berger, who for those first couple of laps really hung right in there and looked like he might be a threat. But now those Williams cars really asserting themselves.
The order is Patrese, Mansell, Berger, Brundle, Alesi, and Hakkinen in the 6 points paying position. Let's get down to the pit lane and Andrew Marriott.
Yes, Bob, and two stories down here. It is starting to rain. You can probably just see it coming on my hands now. It's very slight at the moment, but I suspect it's going to get heavier. I'm in the McLaren pit. No sign of Ayrton Senna back here yet, but I suspect that he won't talk to us. But we'll try. Back to you, Bob.
All right, thank you,
Good
Andrew.
luck.
He will not be a happy man whether he talks or not. On board with Michael Schumacher. As you can see, still blue sky out in front. And still Patrese in the lead over Mansell and moving away.
There's rain on the lens of that camera there, just a few spots. This is that long, these are the sort of corners that give you heart failure when it is just starting to rain, because obviously on a longish circuit like this, you're not quite sure if it's rained on the other side of the road, the other side of the racetrack. And some of these corners, you go into it about 150 miles an hour.
There's the gap back to Gerhard Berger, getting longer and longer. Now Nigel moves in on his teammate.
Patrese not want to give up easily, even for Nigel.
Riccardo Patrese in his 232nd Grand Prix event. There's Maurizio Gugelmin with Eddie Jordan's team walking back down the pit lane. He must have been involved in some of that fracas. Carl Wendlinger was also involved. At least he stopped. I don't know if he hit anything. But he is back underway once again. Behind Patrese, Mansell, Berger, Brundle, Alesi, and Hakkinen, Terry Boutsen and Eric Comas, the Ligier teammates running on their home track. Johnny Herbert in the Lotus is 9th, and David Capelli of Italy is 10th in the Ferrari. Then Michele Alboreto, Aguri Suzuki, Gianni Morbidelli, Gabriele Tarquini, Fukio Katayama, Pierluigi Martini, Stefano Modena, J.J. Leto, and Carl Wendlinger.
And rushing along at the back of all that lot, just one lap down, is of course Michael Schumacher, who got back to the pits, changed the nose, lost at least one lap. But with the way Formula One races are, if he stays into the end and goes at the speed he's been going in these races, he could even pull up to maybe 6th or 7th. He'll get a point for 6th, obviously, but here we see that the dreaded hairpin again. Nigel right on his teammate.
Remarkable how clear that corner looks after all the debris that was scattered in that first lap incident. Riccardo Patrese, Nigel Mansell, the oldest driving team in Formula One. Both men in their late 30s. They are circulating, rain beginning to fall. We'll take a quick time out and be back with more live from Magny-Cours in France and the French Grand Prix. Back live in France, driving along with Michael Schumacher, who was involved in that first lap incident at the hairpin that tore the front nose off his car when he collided with Ayrton Senna and knocked him from the race. Ripping along now behind, looks like one of the Ferraris up ahead. At least a lap down after that pit stop, Michael Schumacher making his way around. Let's get down to the pits. Andrew Marriott is standing by.
Mauricio, you were caught up in that first lap incident. What happened out there?
Basically, I think all the guys went a bit too fast on the first corner. And I went on the inside, and just between the two corners, I think was one of the pond metals just lost it and came across the road, so I had nowhere to go. He just took me out.
Much damage to the car? Is the car badly damaged?
Basically the nose and the right front corner.
Silverstone next week, better luck perhaps.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. We have to wait for the next weekend.
Back to you, Bob.
Maurizio Gugelmin out of the race. Bertrand Gachot also out. And one of the Fond medals is out. Gabriele Tarquini parked by the side of the road. That may be the one that Maurizio was speaking of. There are the leaders. Riccardo Patrese leading Nigel Mansell. Behind them, Gerhard Berger, Martin Brundle, Jean Alesi, and Mika Hakkinen in the new Lotus. Second team in the field to be using active suspension.
Those aerial shots do give you a good idea of these corners as they come down to the chicane before the last corner. A right-left flick in second gear, stay in second on that short burst up to here, and then quickly up to the gearbox. Very short shift into third, fourth, fifth, and then sixth for this double left-hander. Look at it. They go through there almost flat out. Not quite this afternoon because it is just a tad damp. And then into this long right-hander in fifth gear all the way through here. Accelerate, change to sixth about there. There's old Ayrton Senna observing the scene. Now we're on board with Ivan Capelli, I believe, as he goes in front of the pit.
Keep in mind, these cars still on slick tires. Here comes Michael Schumacher, who has gotten around the Ferrari of Ivan Capelli.
That was Capelli he was following before when we came back. You could see how the Ferrari was quick off the corners, but Schumacher's had trouble with Ferraris in 2 or 3 of the races this year, but he's got around him. But of course, he's a long way down. But if he can keep going to the end, he could even score himself a point this afternoon. It's going to be tough work for him.
Lots of great racing coming your way live on ESPN today. Later today, the cars of the PPG IndyCar World Series will make their debut in New England at Loudon, New Hampshire, at New Hampshire International Speedway, the New England 200, live at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on ESPN. I've spoken with Dorsey Schrader and Brian Till, who both tested extensively at NHIS. They say the race should be absolutely dynamite. 12:30 Eastern Time here on ESPN. Ivan Capelli racing with a heavy weight on his shoulders. He's been taking a great deal of stick from the Italian press about how he's not measuring up to Ferrari's lofty standards.
Not that Ferrari's lofty standards are very lofty this year anyway, but of the two, he is certainly showing the least sign of promise at the moment, and it's just one of those awful situations a driver gets into. It's hard to get out of it when the car is really not up to it.
Here come the leaders, the white number 6 and the red number 5. Frank Williams looking on as his boys go to work. I mentioned Riccardo Patrese's 232nd start. If you think about that, 4 full Grand Prix seasons before the next most experienced driver even entered the series. Absolutely incredible.
It's a pretty staggering record, there's no doubt about it. But poor old Riccardo Patrese is one of those guys who's on the bubble this year. Almost certainly will not be driving a Williams next year. We don't know just exactly who will. Lots of rumors around. But I doubt very much if Patrese will be behind the seat of a Williams next year.
Back down to the pits now, and Andrew.
The old Bertrand Gachot. Were you tied up in that big accident on the first lap?
Yeah, I came in that pack and I had a rear puncture at that time. So when I tried to brake, the car started to go loose, and I just couldn't avoid.
How did you get the puncture?
Well, I just felt a knot on the rear in the first corner. I touched with somebody, so, but I thought it was okay. And then when I braked,
Spectator for today, Bertrand, bad luck. But next time, Silverstone.
Hope it's going to change.
And that is very important for his team. The Venturi Lamborghini team needed points out of this race in order to advance out of early Friday morning pre-qualifying in the second half of the season. Riccardo Patrese coming underneath one of the Tyrrells.
That's Olivier Grouillard, who's never an easy man to lap either. In fact, both of them get around him there.
Ooh, close for Nigel Mansell. Gerhard Berger's McLaren Honda. Both McLarens out of the race. Could it be? That's definitely Berger. What a day for McLaren Honda within 10 laps. Both Ayrton Senna and Gerhard Berger are out of the race. We mentioned constructors' points at the beginning of the show. Well, we're going to see a big swing today, it would appear. Here's another look. Gerhard Berger pulling off.
It certainly looks like a case of a blown engine. Bags of smoke coming out of where it should come out of, the exhaust pipes, but it shouldn't come out on that quantity and nor at that time. And there's Ron Dennis, chef d'équipe of McLaren Honda, so he can start packing up all that TV equipment and his monitors and his computers and start loading up the truck.
Well, the McLaren boys will begin to pack up down in the pits. Meanwhile, they have to watch these guys come flying by. The Williams Renaults, the Patrese and Mansell.
As I've said before, the European community, of course, is the new big marketplace for the world manufacturers. It's now a market of some 300 million people, just somewhat bigger than the United States. And there's a lot at stake here. And that's why people like Renault and Honda have been spending so much on racing. And Honda, the last 4 years, of course, have had it all their own way. but now the market is integrating. They're turning to a common currency, and all sorts of rules and regulations are taking effect, and now is the time to make your bid, and Renault are doing it right here in France in front of their home crowd, and of course across worldwide television.
The action continues with 11 lapses complete. I'm having all the lapses. 11 laps are in the books of 72 scheduled. Once again, here is what the French highways are looking like this weekend. Absolute bumper-to-bumper traffic. As French truckers have blocked the ports, they have blocked railway stations, and they are being joined by the farmers, we understand, this weekend. Back live in France, on board was Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, running in 4th position right now, behind Riccardo Patrese, Nigel Mansell, and Martin Brundle. Just behind Alesi, Mika Hakkinen of Finland in the new Lotus 107.
Both Lotuses went very well in qualifying, even though they had a very, very miserable time. Hakkinen coming off best. I think Herbert got involved in that first lap melee down at the hairpin, which delayed him a little bit, although it's currently running in 8th spot. But look at old Hakkinen there in the Lotus V8, really giving that V12 engine Ferrari an extremely hard time. Of course, Lotus also have their active suspension working this weekend, although they qualified without active. So Hakkinen said it was very difficult to go from active to just normal suspension over the course of the practice and qualifying.
Now here's a replay from French television of moments ago. Nigel Mansell looking down the inside against his teammate Riccardo Patrese.
Saying, Riccardo, don't forget I'm here. Don't forget I'm leading the World Championship. You saw there too how dense the area is, how humid it is this afternoon. Hard to tell from this closed booth whether it is going to rain this afternoon. There's Gabriele Tarquini walking back. The old long walk who can do without as a racing driver.
Bad break for his team as well. They too are hoping for a point to get out of pre-qualifying. There is one more fun medal still in the field. Andrea Chiesa of Switzerland at the wheel. Oh, here we go, down the outside this time, Nigel. Shades of Mexico a year ago, where they diced for the lead back and forth. Nigel will come up the inside. He's there, Riccardo, look out.
I think Riccardo is looking out.
Oh, my.
Oh, Riccardo's not going to give up. Now, that'll be making Nigel pretty hot on the old Collaro, I should say. And as you know, Nigel has a very strong neck. Reckons it grows an inch during the season. All this G-load and wearing a helmet. Frank Williams trying to look cool, calm, and collected.
What goes through a car owner's mind when he sees his boys
can you imagine they both took them both out? Which is not beyond the realms of possibility, of course.
Here's a look at just how far Williams has come in the last 2 seasons. You see the performance of the teams in 1991 versus 1992. An absolute turnabout. Just a few years ago, Williams was running Judd engines, and they could not get out of their own way. Then they teamed up with Renault, and after a couple of seasons of experience, they are absolutely dominating Formula One. Riccardo Patrese now opening up a bit of a lead over Mansell.
As they always say, of course, in Formula One, it's the whole package. Nigel Mansell, one of the fastest drivers in the world at the moment. The Renault is obviously very, very powerful. I don't think it gives up any horsepower to anything. And, of course, the chassis is obviously brilliant.
Coming up later today, ESPN presenting America's greatest coverage ever of the toughest athletic event in the world, bar none, at least as far as I'm concerned. The Tour de France begins today. If you've been following the news reports, it's been a rocky start down in San Sebastian, Spain. But ESPN will be bringing you day-to-day coverage throughout the 23 days, over 2,300 miles of cycling in the Tour de France, beginning this afternoon at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Coming down to the Chateau d'Eau, and here we're back on board now with Jean Alesi. Is that the Lotus got past him? It looks a bit like a low tire from the rear. And obviously that's either rain or spray or oil getting onto the camera lens there. You hear him change down. Let's just listen now for a... Into that chicane. Bit slippery now. Whoa, that is Mika Hakkinen in front of him. He has got round him. It's obviously very slippery too.
Watch his right hand as he shifts.
Ooh, how miserable out there at the moment. Whoa! That rain just making that circuit now like glass. Not quite flat through that little court. Oh, going to go down the inside. Hakkinen keeping him out there. I tell you, grip now at an absolute minimum because you got the slick tire. You can see the rain coming off the slick tires now. Getting really desperate now. Aquaplaning.
Oil flag being shown somewhere on the race.
Well, the oil flag is for the rain.
Oh, the rain.
They show the not all the drivers need the flag, but it's a good idea. Oh, getting wide there, bit of understeers. Right up on Mika Hakkinen now. This is where John Alesi really does score in the rain. He's been terrific this year on the few times it's rained.
Let's hear from Andrew in the pits.
Yes, Bob, well, just as you come to me, the rain seems to be coming down harder. It's more than spotting now. As I look over the track, certainly glistering with the water. So I suspect we're going to have a lot of pit visitors in just a few moments.
I don't think anybody can afford to stay on the racetrack much longer under these conditions. Alesi now going down the inside of the chicane.
Where's Hakkinen? Because there wasn't much room left for him, was there?
Yeah, they both got around Olivier Grouillard in the Tyrrell. Now onto the front straightaway, up through the box. Shifting with the right fingers, downshifting with the left.
This is that double left hand of the curve, which is... Now, they seem to be wetter here than anywhere else. See, very much off the power now compared to normal through there, but obviously...
Almost idling. In dry conditions, this is a 180-mile-an-hour straightaway.
Down to the hairpin.
Now back to the lead. Riccardo Patrese and Nigel Mansell. By the way, Jean Alesi just got married 2 weeks ago. He may still be on his honeymoon. He's spending it driving around in the rain in France. Whoops. That's Stefano Modena, I believe, just ahead, getting totally tail-happy.
Down to that chicane.
You can see the roads glistening. The water is really building out there now, yet the field remains on slick tires.
Well, I think it stopped raining again. We can't tell in here, but I think it's probably stopped again, so they're all taking the gamble that it will dry out. Of course, it could start again.
It's a game of... Andrew, what's the condition now, the rain in the pits?
Well, actually, it's harder. I heard you say, David, in the booth, you can't tell. Well, I can tell because it's starting to drip off the end of my nose. Expect to see cars very soon. We're in the Williams pit waiting for that one.
Not a pretty sight at all, the rain dripping off the end of Andrew's nose. Oh, yeah, you can see the spray there now. Ooh, going down the inside. Ooh, is that one of the Tyrrells there? That must be Amber de Chesris. And Nigel's getting alongside. That's one of the Delaras, the red car.
J.J. Leto, I believe they're going around. A game of high-speed chicken here. Who will stop first for the wet weather tires? Are you going slow enough on your slicks that you need to change to the rains? We'll find out if the rain continues to fall. Back in France, the red flag has come out. This happened moments ago after 19 of the 72 laps of the Grand Prix of France. You can see just how hard it's raining out there. On the front straightaway, it may still be there. Yes, the Minardi of Gianni Morbidelli. Now the car's being brought to a halt on the straightaway.
I guess it's the Minardi that brought the red flag out as the most peculiar. I can't imagine it's just because of the rain, because obviously everybody can make their own decision as to when and where to stop. But maybe that Minardi had just absolutely come to a halt in the middle of the track there and was stuck for some reason or other. And that was probably what brought out the red flag.
At the lower left of your screen, you saw the McLaren Honda.
There's Wendlinger's car steaming away pretty successfully by the look of it.
Down in the pits, hopefully Andrew can shed more light on what's going on. Andrew?
Well, I've got Eddie Jordan with me. Eddie, they've stopped the race just because of the rain?
Well, obviously the situation in this particular type of racing, Grand Prix racing, where you've got slick tires and everything is hot, there's no provision to stop for a race for wet tyres. So the race was declared a dry race. Once it's declared a dry race, the clerk of the course has to officially stop it to give the team the opportunity to change onto wet tyres. If, as what will happen now, we go on to wet tyres, it will be declared a wet race, and then it's up to us to stop for slicks if it becomes dry or not. But this is unfortunately what happens in Grand Prix racing. I personally think it's the safest way to do it. It was becoming extremely dangerous, and I think perhaps sensible decision to do.
Thanks very much, Eddie. Well, he knows the rules, and you know them all across America now. Thank you.
It's a great long scale.
Now, here is an example of what Eddie Jordan is talking about. This is the number 3 Tyrrell of Olivier Grouillard. Nice bit of car control there in the
Absolutely,
chicane.
yeah. That looks like one of the Ligiers following. The Ligiers, meanwhile, have crept up. I'm amazed that the French TV hasn't showed it, but Boutsen and Comas are lying in 6th and 7th spot, having qualified in 9th and 10th. So, Boutsen at least is in a point-scoring position, and I'm amazed that we haven't seen them.
Now, here's a replay of the start. Watch as the bright yellow and green Benetton of Michael Schumacher comes up and hits the red and white McLaren of Ayrton Senna. That knocked the 3-time and defending world champion out of the race.
And causing chaos back in the pack there, as that Fond metal, as you said, going lancing across the track sideways. Hard to tell who was actually at fault there. You know, hairpin, first lap, 26 cars all trying to get through it at the same time. Probably Schumacher was being just a bit brave trying to get around the inside of Senna. In fact, Senna is well ahead, really, because we can see on the camera on the right-hand side of the car, we can see Senna's car on the left of Schumacher. He was pretty clearly ahead.
Now, once the cars are put on to wet weather tires, they will not add fuel, and they're not allowed to make any other mechanical adjustments. They will put on the wet weather tires, restart the race, and we will run this race on cumulative time, which is going to make it very interesting for our announced position statistician, Dan Knutson, who will have to do the fastest math of his life in order to keep us up to date on who was exactly running where. 15 of the 26 starters remained on the lead lap when the race was red flagged. Carl Wendlinger, the last of those.
And it could get even more complicated. Starting next week at Silverstone, if this had happened, they would have, in fact, brought out a pace car. First time ever in Formula One, and it would have led the field a la American-style racing, IndyCar and NASCAR racing. But all the time gaps would have stayed the same, so that when the green flag came out again, somebody else could have assumed the lead, and if the spectators thought he was in the lead, he definitely would not be necessarily, depending on the time gap going into the pace car situation.
That pace car David's talking about is just one of many new rules coming online in Formula One. In addition to the pace car, the cars themselves will be made narrower, the wings will be lowered, the rear wheels will be narrowed by 3 inches, which means that Goodyear, the sole tire supplier in Formula One these days, will have to re-engineer and rebuild tires. And this is not something that's up to discussion. The teams allegedly all agreed to it, and so it is the plan for next season.
That could be a technical infringement of the rules there, cleaning the inside of your visor like that during a red flag.
We are under a red flag here at the Grand Prix of France while the teams replace tires, wet for dry. We'll be back to try to get things underway again in just a few moments.
Well, I'm amongst the Formula One big wheels. These, the 18-inch rears from Ligier, and then the narrower fronts. Now, FISA announced last week that wheel widths will be reduced by about 3 inches. This has made Goodyear extremely unhappy, and we talked to Lee Gogg about the situation.
We think 2 things. First of all, it would be much too expensive for us to develop new front tires, new rear tires to go that far down. New compounds certainly would have to be developed because you'd have to have harder compounds to be able to hold up under the speeds and cornering forces. Second of all, we think going that low would be tremendously dangerous because right now in Canada, every driver is spun off. People are complaining here, our race tire only lasts 1 lap or give up. The smaller the tire, the more slipping and sliding, the more spins, potentially the more crashes, maybe more injuries, more complaints about the tire that we can't do anything about, which is not what we're in racing for.
Well, that report on tires, recorded by Andrew earlier in the weekend, and it has become enormously apropos here.
Well, I have to agree with Lee on one point, that they're going to get the blame when it's not their fault when the rules change. I don't agree with him when he says it's going to be more dangerous because it's going to be more slipping and sliding. The driver is always in control of the slipping and sliding of his vehicle, and when they used to race on tires that were 4 inches wide, they slipped and slid around a lot, but they didn't necessarily go diving off the road at every 2 seconds. So I think I think the Goodyear's complaint really is that when it's on the TV and the driver gets out and says, "I've got no grip," that the viewer at home is going to say, "Oh, on his Goodyear tires, he hasn't got any grip." That's not the case at all, really. It's just if the regulations are that way, that's what they're going to have to race to.
Let's get down to the pits now, where Andrew is standing by with one of the drivers.
Well, Bob, not actually in the pits because we're right on the racetrack here. Total chaos down here. Mika, you were having a fantastic drive there in the top 6.
Oh, it's really good fun at the moment. The car going well and tires good. It's good.
What about the decision to stop the race?
Well, I think it was really a good idea to stop the race because it was, raining and it was so dangerous. The car was sliding all over the place. And but still it was good.
So what's your strategy for the second half?
Well, we're going to put the fresh tires and I'm going to go for it again.
Fantastic. Back to you, Bob.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Mika Hakkinen, as a Finnish racing driver, he knows all about car control. He learned how to drive in the snow and ice. That has helped Scandinavia produce so many great rally drivers over the years.
Well, he certainly came into his own there on that damp track, although Alesi went by him again in the Ferrari. He, too, is one of these guys that really likes the conditions to be slippery. He'll like those narrow tires, I'd say.
While we have a moment, the race being red flagged, we have a mandatory hold before the race will get underway again. We'd like to talk a little bit about next year's schedule in Formula One. A draft schedule is already being circulated to the teams, and it will provide for some interesting travel. There's the car of the world champion, Ayrton Senna, out of the race at the very first corner of the first lap. Not the first corner, but the hairpin on the first lap. He is now out of the race. Let's get back down to Andrew in the pits.
I've got Andrea Tejauseris. Do you think that was the right decision, Andrea?
Yeah, I think it was right. Even before it was right, because the track was wet and we had slicks, so the rules are clear, so we had to stop.
Did you have any big moments out there?
One, yes. I mean, it's difficult to drive with the slicks on the wet track, and everybody was trying, so I think it was unfair not to stop.
Have a good second half of the race. Thanks, Andrea. Back to you, Bob.
Is it still raining down there, Andrew?
No, it isn't, actually, David. It stopped, and we could see more tyre stops to go back onto slicks, because now it's been declared a wet race, of course.
Well, exactly. That's what my point was. They're going to stop for 20 minutes for the mandatory stop. They're going to put the wet tyres on, and by the time they start again, if it stopped raining, it'll be drying out.
Exactly my point, David. I wanted to ask you, why not just let them stop for rain tires?
Don't ask me, Bob. I don't make the rules and regulations. I'm with you. I would have thought that the guy's got to make a decision when he's slipping and sliding around and say, I'm going to stop and put tires on. They do it in a dry race. They all rush into the pits together, put new dries on. Why not go from dries to wet?
Well, my argument exactly. I think you ought to let them stop, although you may have a safety problem with guys winging into the pits at high speed and a wet track to try to get stopped in the pits with all those people walking around.
I don't make the rules and regulations, Bob. All I know is I'm going to be all right this weekend because I've got my new wet weather gear now, so I can go out there, and there you see a bit of wet weather there. Just raining just a little bit, because it might rain again, too. I mean, that's the best thing for us. Now, as Andrew says, it's now been declared a wet race. Now, for some reason or other, when it does dry out, it is up to the driver to come in and change onto the slick tyres when he feels he has to. The lap time we're going to be looking for is about a 1:33. Once they get down to 1:33s in the wet, on wet tyres, then the consensus is that they should put the slicks back on. They race these cars in pretty damp conditions on slick tyres relatively successfully. I mean, it really was raining very hard then. A lot of rooster tail coming off those slick tyres.
There's the Fun Medal Ford of Gabriele Tarquini now out of the race. One Fun Medal remains in.
It's Guy Ligier, the owner of the Ligier team, talking to Thierry Boutsen.
Former professional rugby player and now industrial magnate who runs and owns the Ligier team. Guy Ligier under tremendous amount of pressure. He left Monaco on the Thursday after he walked out in the pit lane and was booed by the predominantly French crowd for not doing any better. Ricardo Patrese ready to climb back in. You see cars being pushed back into open track. We'll clear the grid and try to get things underway once again at a most eventful French Grand Prix. One of the most colorful crops in all of France are sunflowers. Acres and acres of them in the sun, what sun we've had here in France. In addition to inspiring artists everywhere, they are also processed for cooking oil, and of course many of their seeds go to American baseball players. We'll be right back. We are back live high over the Circuit Nevers in Manicourt, France. The beautiful Loire Valley. Not so beautiful this weekend, I'm afraid. We've had lots of rain, and it is rain that has brought the French Grand Prix to a stop. Now we see slick tires going back on one of the Benettons, and we have also seen engine covers and nose pieces coming off these cars. They're not allowed to make mechanical adjustments, is my understanding, David.
Well, our pit sleuth is trying to find out the scope on that, the scoop on that. You're absolutely right. As we went to that commercial break, we were on board the Benetton, and you could see them working with the nose of the car off. Strictly speaking, under a red flag situation, you're not allowed to work on the car. But as Andrew told us just a few moments ago, he'd seen some cars with the engine covers off as well. So maybe they've changed that rule and we are not fully aware of it. And, of course, the sun is now out.
Coming up on Sunday Night Baseball here on ESPN, the Oakland A's will make a stop in Cleveland. They do battle with the Cleveland Indians. Join John Miller and Joe Morgan calling the action at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. We'd also like to wish a happy 4th of July weekend to everybody back home in the States. I'm sure David does. Oh, no, that's right. You don't particularly care about 4th of July, do you, Brits? Let's get down to Andrew in the pits and see if he can clear up some of the many mysteries that have cropped up in this French Grand Prix. Andrew?
I don't know if Marc Blundell, winner of Le Mans, can clear that situation up. Mark, what do you think about them stopping the race first?
Yeah, it's difficult to really give a definite answer. Now, obviously, the weather conditions weren't going to get any better at that time, but now you can see the weather again. It's brightened up. The track is drying out very quickly again.
You've just won Le Mans with a Peugeot V10 engine. You said a lot of good things about that engine. You're a McLaren test driver. Have you told them to Ron Dennis?
Yeah, obviously, I've spoken to a lot of people about the engine. It's a fantastic engine. It's a good car. Everybody wants to know what it's like, but whether that's for the future or not with anybody, I'm not too sure.
Well, we saw you win Le Mans on ESPN. The best moment of your racing life?
One of them. I mean, fantastic achievement. Very nice to go in there and win. It's the only race I got this year. Enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, let's hope that situation changes. Back to you in the booth.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Marc Blundell brings up a good point. McLaren will not confirm, well, they will confirm one thing. They will confirm that they have no confirmation they'll have Honda engines again next year. And everyone is wondering what the dominant engine company in Formula One is going to do next year.
Well, of course, McLaren cars have built their new Super Road car with a brand new engine built specifically for them by BMW. And I believe it's a very, very unique 6-litre V12, but very compact. So obviously there's a possibility there. But as you say, that Peugeot engine, which won Le Mans, obviously tremendously reliable, very powerful, and Jean Todt, the race director of Peugeot, has been seen in the paddock, as they say in racing circles.
They would have to shrink that 6-litre engine by 2.5 liters to get it into the 3.5-litre Formula One. Let's take another look now at what happened in the opening laps of this race as the field rocketed around the long back curving straightaway, if you will, down to the first corner. Michael Schumacher and Ayrton Senna came together, and behind them, chaos. Carl Wendlinger in that Miami blue March. Bertrand Gachot, who already had a tire go down, he said. There you see Schumacher in the green and yellow Benetton, lost his front wing. Here comes Wendlinger in a wild spin. Gachot right in the middle of it. And the rest of the field trying to pick its way through the debris.
There's Jordan and one of the two squeezing through. That's Andrea de Cesaris, I think. But the crowd, you can see there, the grandstands are certainly not full today. Very expensive for one thing, and of course the weather.
Quickly, we need to get to Andrew in the pits.
Yeah, I've got Frank Williams with me. Frank, how many laps are going to be in this second half of the race?
I think there were 52 left to go. You take 3 away from that, so it'll be 48 or 49.
Now, David Hobbs is worried that on the Parc Ferme he saw people taking engine covers and noses off. Is that allowed?
Yeah, you can do anything you like to the car apart from refuel it until the 5-minute board.
Frank, you must be happy with the way the race is going so far?
that's only so far. A long way still, Andrew.
Frank, we'll keep our fingers crossed for you. Back to you in the booth.
Cautious as ever, Frank Williams. That's a new wrinkle in my rule book. I didn't think you were allowed to do anything to the car. The field has pulled away. There you see Ukyo Katayama of Japan and the other Venturi LaRousse machine. Having a little problem getting that Lamborghini V12 fired up, it would appear. Now, Frank Williams gave you the basics of the restart procedure. The red flag flew on lap 19, so the statisticians count back to the running order at lap 18, which would leave 54 laps. They subtract the formation laps that they will run before they go back out and subtract the red flag lap, number 19. So my guess is we have about 51 or 52 laps remaining in this race. And as you can see, the horizon is
I
still
tell them
dark.
we're pretty sure it's 52.
Thank you, Andrew.
Background, which is the direction the weather is coming from. They're facing the direction the weather's coming. No, they're not. They're facing away from it now. But that sky does not look too promising. We're on board now with Schumacher, who I believe is about 5 minutes down from the leader. Now running in 20th spot. 1 lap off. I don't see how it can be. Well, they're showing us 1 lap down.
The 15 cars on the lead lap, according to official timing and scoring, are Patrese, Mansell, Brundle, Alesi, Hakkinen, Boutsen, Comas, Johnny Herbert, Ivan Capelli, Michele Alboreto, Aguri Suzuki, Gianni Morbidelli, Ukyo Katayama, who you saw having a little trouble getting his car started, Pierluigi Martini, Carl Wendlinger, J.J. Leto, and Andrea De Cesaris. On to the front stretch they come.
Now, of course, the one thing we do know is they're going to have another standing start, and the standing start now will be in the order of how they finished when the race was red flagged. So, Riccardo Patrese has assumed pole position.
On board was Jean Alesi, who will line up right behind Nigel Mansell in the column of cars on the right side of your screen. The sun is shining once again here, but it may not last.
I tell you, one of these standing starts would be enough for my heart in one day, let alone 2 of them.
Not to mention your clutch. So once again, the green flag waves. We will get the red light and the green. Let's see who gets a better start this time around. Who gets a jump start this time around? Olivier Griard absolutely launched at the red light.
And Riccardo Patrese out. Oh, tire smoke everywhere there. Wrong camera cut again. And Riccardo Patrese again out-dragged his teammate Nigel Mansell into the first turn. A lot of tire smoke at that turn from some of the midfield runners.
That was the Grand Curb. Now down to the Adelaide Hairpin, where there was so much drama in the first time. Nigel Mansell down the inside will take over the lead. Whoa, Patrese comes back. Riccardo Patrese may have come back up the inside.
And one of the Benettons has spun off again. Is that Schumacher? I think it is, yes.
Oh.
Well, boy, 2 out of 2. Not too good, Michael. Engine's still running. Don't stall it. Here we see him now.
Oh, he goes right up over the rear wheel.
That's done his suspension. He's out.
Went right up over the back of Stefano Modina's Jordan Yamaha. Meanwhile, up front, the Williams-Renault teammates duking it out for the lead. Martin Brundle now coming up behind. Let's see, once again, there is Michael Schumacher going up over Stefano Modena. And
now he started at the back, and you can see where he is. He'd passed, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 9 cars he'd passed before he got down to the hairpin, and thought he'd passed 3 or 4 more in the hairpin. And, well, I think you want to see the tapes of this race.
Nigel Mansell is now in the lead. Let's hear more from Andrew Marriott in the pits.
Brundle and Capelli apparently have changed tyres after the 5-minute board went up. That's illegal. Peter Collins of Team Lotus has been down to complain to the clerk of the course, so we'll watch for that situation, Bob.
Oh, my, Andrew. You might tell him to look into Olivier Griard's situation, too. I mean, he was up to about 100 miles an hour when the green light flashed. They're going to have a lot of fun sorting this one out.
Boy, I tell you, there's the 2 Ligiers here. Oh, see the water there at the edge. Martin Brundle, John Alesi in the Ferrari. Ferrari fans all around the world want this team to do so well, and it's just had a couple of really tough years. But if anybody can get it up to the front, it will be Jean Alesi, now giving Martin Brundle in the V8-engined Benetton a good run there. And behind him is Mika Hakkinen in the other V8-engined Lotus. Both those V8s, of course, are the Ford HB. The highest revving V8 ever, 13,500 RPM and well over 700 horsepower. They're a bit coy about how much, but probably around about 730.
With an engine management system that makes 1.7 million measurements per second. I guess when your engine...
That's just a Mark 1 question, too. The Mark 2 is coming along. Brundle, Alesi. Riccardo Patrese now running in second. As we said at the beginning of the show, just half as many points as Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell on 56. Riccardo Patrese on 28 points. Now, and Senna, of course, is going to be stuck where he was before on 18.
Keep in mind that Nigel is ahead on the racetrack, but he may be behind in the race because all that is important now is the time differential when the red flag waves. And it'll take a little figuring out before we can bring that to you. All Nigel Mansell can do at this point is run as hard as he can and try to pull away to overcome the time deficit to his teammate.
Certainly looks, in this look at that sky, that we are in for another pit stop sooner or later. Mansell seems to be putting more daylight between himself than existed at that red flag, although we didn't actually see those two right at the end there.
Now that the action has calmed down, we'll take a quick time out and be back for more live coverage of the French Grand Prix. Stay with us. Back live beyond Villeneuve à France, and you see the dark clouds over the Ferrari of Jean Alesi with that V12 screaming at his back. Excuse me, Yvonne Capelli. And those clouds are what I'm watching. We may get rain again here at the Grand Prix.
Betty Bodden, we have got rain. It's either rain or oil coming off the car in front. I think that car in front is Eric Comas in one of the Ligiers. Not absolutely sure.
Now, this race was red flagged once. We are now operating in the second half, and our Tag Heuer Olivetti computer timing system is making the adjustments for us so that we can tell you that Nigel Mansell is now leading this race, but only by 0.8 of a second, based on aggregate times of the first 18 laps before the race was red flagged and the action in real time at the moment.
This is the 180, so-called. Second gear, third, fourth. There, the sun's still shining out there, but it looks very bleak on the horizon as Nigel Mansell leads the French Grand Prix, which he won so convincingly last year.
We get a wide shot of him. You can see hit the gap back to second place, Riccardo Patrese. It's much closer than it looks, folks. We'll try to keep you up to date on the progress of the race on accumulated times. And later on today, don't forget, you will see live coverage of the first visit of the PPG IndyCar World Series to Loudon, New Hampshire at 12:30 Eastern Time live. It will be the New England 200 on the 1.058-mile four-turn banked oval at Loudon, New Hampshire. Stand by for that. Meanwhile, Nigel Mansell, as the field begins to string out, is looking for his 6th victory in 8 races in the first half of the 1992 World Championship.
Martin Brundle there in the V8 engine Benetton, hanging on well to Riccardo Patrese and putting a bit of distance between himself and Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, who in turn is coming under a little bit of pressure from Mika Hakkinen in the Lotus.
Nigel Mansell has set fast lap of the race, and it will be a new record because of the change in configuration of this racetrack. Well, 1 minute there is sunshine, the next minute we have a downpour.
And we've got somebody in the gravel trap there too, I noticed. Couldn't quite see who it was. Track looking pretty dry now. The grip that these cars develop as he goes through that chicane, then through the right-hander onto pit straight. Now leading by an aggregate of 1.9 seconds. And they are actually 16 seconds ahead of Martin Brundle, but certainly not 16 seconds ahead on the track because they're taking into account the distance they were ahead of him before we had that red flag. So Martin Brundle is only just behind Riccardo Patrese, but he is in fact, 25 seconds in arrears of Patrese. Ooh, locking up there.
Listen to how quickly he shifts with this semi-automatic, pneumatically controlled transmission.
Right hand up, left hand down. Using a lot of road there. Got the old left wheel right up to the line as Benny Parsons once said to me, watching a Formula 5000 race. In fact, it was Jackie Oliver, who owns the footwork team here, was coming off turn 9 at Riverside, right up to the wall in a Formula 5000 car, and Benny was standing aghast in the pit saying, that is the wheel by the wall. He didn't seem to think that was such a hot idea, being used to having the door handle close to the wall. Into this fast left-hander. This would be 5th gear in the absolute dry. Up to 6th. Long straight. No, it's 7th, of course. Quick right-hander there, golf, flat out. Down to the hairpin, it's claimed Schumacher twice. Ooh, lucky into it there. 2nd gear hairpin. Through this chicane, they're reputed to give 3 Gs. That's 3 Gs each way, of course. 3 Gs to the right, 3 Gs to the left. 180 again. You can hear him feathering the throttle there, just trying to get that thing to grip. The front end wants to break away. Up to the gears. Another chicane coming up. This one's got a bit of a dip in it. Ooh, down, stomach, hits the floor. Out of this.
That'll send the old pasta to your ankles.
3rd gear. 4th. 5th. And back down to 2nd or... Ooh, it's just giving the old wheel a bit of a tweak there. You butchered it. 2nd there.
These transmissions used to have 7 speeds, but Ferrari took one out because their new engine in 1992 gave so much good response. Just not giving quite enough horsepower, they say. There is Eric Comas, one of the Ligers. Team, as we mentioned earlier, that has come into a lot of bad press. They are using the same Renault engines that Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese have, but they have a very difficult chassis to balance, and they cannot make it work. Let's get a comment now from Andrew down in the pits.
Yes, Michael Schumacher has just walked through the pit. I got a no comment into the back of the truck, where he then lay down and was getting a little bit of a treatment. I didn't see him limping as he went past me, but obviously he's bruised after that fly into the air. So if we can get Schumacher later, obviously we'll bring him to you. Well,
that was Gruyard coming out of the pits there. Was that a stop-and-go penalty of some sort after that start that you saw?
Absolutely. He went to the far end of the pit lane. It may have been the stop-and-go. Now here is Stefano Modena in the Jordan Yamaha. All of their race engines for this weekend were stuck on the highway in the truckers' blockade. They had others flown in from Japan and Great Britain. They also had trouble getting their fuel in here, as did many of the teams. But the teams all pulled together. Everyone shared equipment in order to get this race on the road.
Now, Modena there, of course, could have been suffering from damage when he got tangled up with Schumacher, that first lap crash. You know, he went right over Modena's left rear wheel. It may have done some damage to it. But of course, the 2 Williams Renaults now, all their major competitors have been taken out of this race, both McLaren Hondas and Schumacher. The only person that was giving Riccardo Patrese a run for 2nd place in the championship, just 1 point behind, so he won't be scoring any points today. So this really is going to give, assuming they both finish, going to give McLaren, the Williams Renault a huge jump up in the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship.
Back aboard with Jean Alesi. Ferrari, 25 races now without a victory, one of their longest droughts ever. Their very longest, 35 races from 1985 to 1987. Very slow corner. Jean Alesi continues to make his way along. 27 laps now complete. Nigel Mansell pulling away by a second a lap on the field. Just a short walk from the circuit here in Magny-Cours is a world away in time and space and history. We'll be back with more of the French Grand Prix from the otherwise noisy Magny-Cours. Back live at Magny-Cours, France, on board with Jean Alesi in the French Grand Prix. Bob Varsha, David Hobbs, glad to have you with us. Down in the pits is Andrew Marriott, and it has been absolutely wild. A crash at the hairpin on the very first lap damaged Michael Schumacher's Benetton and knocked Ayrton Senna's McLaren out of the race. Gerhard Berger exploded the engine in his McLaren Honda shortly after, so both McLarens are out. Nigel Mansell was on the verge of taking over the lead from his Williams-Renault teammate Riccardo Patrese when the rain came. The race was red flagged. We're back underway. Mansell has absolutely rocketed away into the lead with 29 of 72 laps complete. He has reset the record fast lap of the race, 1 minute 17 seconds now. It is Mansell, Patrese, Brundle, this man, Jean Alesi, Mika Hakkinen, and Terry Boutsen in the 6-point paying positions. Now, the reason we're probably seeing Alesi so much is that he is the top-running French driver in this race.
And there's one of the others. That's the top-running French car, which is the Boutsen Ligier. And there, of course, is the top-running French engine, the Patrese engined Williams Renault. Now then, there's the two cars, Brundle and Alesi, running in third and fourth spot. Well, in reality, they're not that close together. Alesi is 10 seconds behind Martin Brundle.
Through the dip and up through the sharp left-hander, then into the chicane and the long run down to the front stretch. Nigel Mansell. With a victory today, should it happen, he will tie Jackie Stewart as the winningest British racing driver of all time.
With 27 wins.
There is Jean Alesi. Former winners of this race, in addition to Nigel Mansell, include Alain Prost, who is here this weekend working for French television as a commentator. As you can see, Mansell and Prost have basically dominated this race. Through its history, it has been held at 6 different racetracks. Most recently, beautiful Paul Ricard down on the Côte d'Azur, one of my favorite racetracks in the world. But this is France. They wanted to bring the race closer to Paris, and so they renovated this Manicourt circuit, and this is now the home of the French Grand Prix. There you see how the field is now strung out. Of the 26 cars, my unofficial count shows 17 still racing.
Nigel has a huge lead now. He's got a 7-second lead over Riccardo Patrese, who in turn has got a 28-second lead over Martin Brundle, who in fact has got a 10-second lead on Jean Alesi because of the fact that this is now a 2-part race, whereas in actual fact on the road he is just a few feet in front of Jean Alesi. So Alesi needs to get around him, and then he needs to put at least 10 more seconds in front of him to actually annex that third spot from Martin Brundle.
Let's get down to the pits and Andrew Marriott.
Yes, you talked about Yamaha having to fly those V12 engines in from Japan because of the blockade. Well, they need another one now because Modena retirement was the situation with him popping the engine. That's not the first time we've seen it this season with Yamaha. Back to you, Bobby.
On board once again with Jean Alesi. And now we switch to Mika Hakkinen, the new Lotus 107, another actively suspended car. A very different technology than the one used on the Williams Renaults, but it was the Lotus team that introduced active suspension technology into Formula One.
And there you can see the two French Ligiers of Boutsen and Comas, and they're running in 6th and 7th spots, so Boutsen at least looks to get a point, and actually it's very important for this team to get a point. They need to get points, of course. The pressure was taken off them a couple of weeks ago when Eric Comas, shown there with the red helmet, scored 1 point because they were about to fall into the dreaded maw of pre-qualifying, which is this 8 o'clock run on Friday morning, which nobody wants to be involved in. And if they get some points before the end, before today, or including today, the change takes place next week at Silverstone, and so it's essential for them to get another point.
Assuming anybody can get to Silverstone with a blockade outside the gates.
That's true, because at 6 o'clock tonight is the D-Day. They have a big convoy which is supposed to be police escorted, and it's going to be interesting to see that huge convoy of trucks wend its way across Europe.
There is Terry Boutsen. Onto the front straight, his teammate Eric Comas just behind them, running in 6th and 7th.
And right behind Comas is Ivan Capelli in the 2nd of the Ferraris. And as you can see, he's only just behind Comas, but is in fact 7 seconds down because of the way this race has now been run in 2 parts. There he is. Obviously that's not 7 seconds, but so he has to get around Comas and pull out 7 seconds to get another place.
Harry Boutsen, wife Patricia on hand for this race. His son Kevin just about to turn 2 years of age. You mentioned the crowds in the stand, David. Actually, I'm surprised at the size of the crowds.
I am. It's definitely down from last year, but of course, what with the truck drivers' blockage and the weather and all the other uncertainties at the moment, I'm amazed that there's as many people here as there are.
There you see across the racetrack, in the most expensive seats, almost $300 a seat across the way there. Thousands of people on hand here. This track is not heavily used during the course of the year as Carl Wendlinger brings the march in. They actually held a hunt. They allowed hunters to come into the track because they had a lot of varmints, rabbits, gophers, things of that nature that they needed to get rid of before they brought the race cars in.
Gopher stew coming up for deux monsieur. There we see the Ferrari. Not the Ferrari. It's Nigel Mansell about to lap
Olivier Grilliard.
Olive Grilliard.
Here's Grilliard, not an easy man to get around. Nigel Mansell, not a man inclined to wait for an opportunity.
Now Grilliard, as we saw, had a stop-and-go penalty because he jumped the start.
That has been confirmed by the officials. Olivier Grilliard, well, what kind of confirmation? Even I could see that Olivier was gone when the red light was still on.
Getting plenty of blue flags there. That's not because they're in France. That is, of course, the passing flag, just to warn him that somebody's coming up. And old Oliver needs lots of warning.
Nigel Mansell. What a career turnabout for the man. Frank Williams looking on as his ace. Tries to get around the Tyrrell of Grilliard.
He's got all the time in the world to take time here. He's 11 seconds in front of Riccardo Patrese, his teammate. As we go back to... That's the Dallara, I think, that he's about to dispose of next.
2 years ago, Nigel Mansell had 3 poles. He had 2 last year, won a few races in that span. This year, 7 poles in 8 races and 5 victories in the 7 starts preceding the one here today. Rocketing around, the resident of Clearwater, Florida. Nigel making his winter home in the United States where he can play golf, get in shape for the race. Now here is a look at how 2 teams have done sharing the same power. The Williams team, look at the points they've amassed as opposed to Ligier using those same Renault engines. That is where the bad press for Ligier is coming from. Same for McLaren. The Footwork team does not have exactly the same engines. They have the old Honda V10s, although rumor has it they may have Honda with Mugen tuning V12s next year. So there is more than just horsepower that makes a quality Formula One effort.
I'm not quite sure that the Renault engines in the Ligier is exactly the same as the ones in the Williams. Apart from they obviously cost them about $4 or $5 million a year as opposed to them being free for Williams, which does tend to help the way the driver handles the machinery. And they are a couple of stages behind in development. Probably not a great deal of horsepower, but every bit counts in Formula One, where they go to extreme lengths to save about ½ a pound on the weight of a car because it converts into so much horsepower. Obviously, if you can get 10 or 15 more horsepower, it's jolly well worth having. As Nigel comes into that long 180-degree corner, 3rd gear. On board with Alesi now, is that?
Alesi, I couldn't tell who the car he was passing was.
I was thinking it was Brundle, but it's not. That's Brundle still up in front there.
Alesi continues to fly around the track after a bad crash in testing at the site of the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, in which he split his helmet. Looks fine to me. Thank you, Paul Page. You folks have a good race up at Loudon, New Hampshire at the New Hampshire International Speedway. The fans can look forward to seeing Paul and the rest of the gang with the PPG IndyCar World Series in New Hampshire following our race. Now here's Ivan Capelli, who appears to have expired the engine in his Ferrari. We are on board with Jean Alesi. And speaking of IndyCars, one of Alesi's close friends, Nelson Piquet, we understand, is now moved out of Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis and now ready to begin his rehabilitation. Nelson, we know you're watching. Everyone in Formula One wishes you a speedy rehabilitation. Good to have you up and around again. We now have 37 laps complete of 72 scheduled here at the French Grand Prix. Officials have determined that the race will not be allowed to run more than 2 hours, 25 minutes, and 41 seconds based on an elaborate calculation of the maximum allowable time, the time the race was stopped, plus the 2 hours it is allowed to run. But I don't think we're going to get close to that, especially not at the rate Nigel Mansell is flying around this 2.6-mile racetrack. Now let's take a look at our Suzuki race recap. Nigel Mansell is the leader, having taken over from his teammate Riccardo Patrese. He has led 20 of the 38 laps he has now completed. We have had one lead change, as I mentioned. Nigel with the fastest lap, 1 minute 17.070 seconds, and he is resetting it just about every other lap.
And that, of course, is a new lap record. The record last year was a 1:19, but as you said at the beginning of the show, they have taken out a chicane to speed them up, but it seems to have speeded his race time up more than his qualifying. In qualifying, he was just over a second quicker than last year, and now nearly 2 seconds quicker in the race, and of course the race is not over yet. The car will get quicker as it gets lighter.
Andrew has a comment now from the pit lane.
Yes, well, the man who finished fourth in Canada, Carl Wendlinger, has retired with a stiff neck and a stiff gear change, apparently. In fact, he has got quite a bit of a problem with his neck and has gone off to the doctor. Michael Schumacher, I grabbed a quick word of him where our camera sadly couldn't go, and he said, well, it was all my fault. You can only blame one person, me. So that's the news from here in the pits. Back to you, Bob.
Good to hear that kind of candor from a contemporary Formula One driver. Carl Wendlinger had a big crash in yesterday's qualifying, was taken to a local hospital for x-rays, was allowed to drive, but no surprise that his neck is sore.
And of course he had a spin on that first lap and bounced around a couple of cars, so that may have aggravated any problem that he had with his neck. Nigel Mansell again trying to put a lap down on another Tyrrell. I guess that must be Andrea de Cesaris, as we've already seen him go past Brouillard. No, that is Brouillard again. Number 3. Gosh, he doesn't give him much room, does he, considering he's been lapped for the second time. Is that Riccardo Patrese going by?
That's Patrese in second place.
Right.
If the race were to end as it is right now between Mansell and Patrese, Mansell would have 66 points toward the World Championship to Patrese's 34. And if Nigel wins this race, he may be pretty much uncatchable this year. We have golf coming up later today. Final round of the Cadillac Senior PGA Tour Kroger Senior Classic. Coming your way from Kings Island, Ohio at the Jack Nicklaus Sports Center. Jack designed the Grizzly course on which the tournament is being played. A $600,000 purse, $90,000 to the winner. And our coverage will begin live here on ESPN at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The Kroger Senior Classic on the Cadillac Senior PGA Tour. On the racetrack, there is J.J. Leto about to be overcome by the second-place car in the field, Riccardo Patrese.
And you can see just how humid it is here today in France. I've never seen such long vortexes, streamers of condensed water being squeezed out of the atmosphere by the pressure. These wings develop so much, they pressurize the air so much, it squeezes the water out of it, just like some people sitting in an airplane. You can see it going over the wings. These racing car wings are just the same, but never seen them that long before.
We've certainly had no shortage of water in the air this weekend in France.
You and I were here just 2 weeks ago, and it was looking pretty dry, actually, for Le Mans. But, I mean, since then, it must have rained a lot, because it really has greened up a treat. Ooh, there goes Nigel Patrese around the inside of J.J. Leto in the Dallara. Ferrari engine, of course, in that car.
11 cars remain on the lead lap. Mansell, Patrese, Brundle, Alesi, Hakkinen, Boutsen, Comas, Herbert, Alboreto, Morbidelli, and De Cesaris. There you see J.J. Leto, the Finn, a protege of former world champion Keke Rosberg, who was also here this weekend.
Got up and left when we sat down for lunch, didn't we?
Indeed, he did. Probably because you were there. Riccardo Patrese well down to his teammate, about 15 seconds now behind his teammate Nigel Mansell.
A lot of speculation, of course. As we have said before, silly season started to run rife. Now there we see Martin Brundle in the sole remaining Benetton Ford car, and right behind him is that Mika Hakkinen? I think it must be Mika Hakkinen in the Lotus.
catching him up very quickly.
Catching him up at a heck of a rate.
Catching him up and passing him, I would guess, right here.
Yeah, not like Martin Brundle to make room like that either. Now, I wonder if Brundle's got a problem, because that's the Ferrari behind Brundle as well, which is where it's been all along. But Mika Hakkinen absolutely rocketing along. Does that mean that he's passed Alesi and Brundle in the last lap? Because we're certainly not showing it on our scoreboard.
We'll see what happens when the Tag Heuer Olivetti system recycles as they cross the start-finish line.
Peter Collins, the team manager, chief engineer, chief cook and bottle washer for Lotus, yesterday afternoon in the paddock was very optimistic, very up on the car. You know, he said they've just got a few little problems, but he really feels that by the end of the season, it's going to be very, very competitive. And lots of rumors. I was just about to start talking about rumors. Lots of rumors surrounding Lotus in the paddock this weekend. Some of them very exciting for our American viewers. So therefore, we won't tell you what they are, but they are very, very exciting.
I'll let you read the mail after that comment, pal. Benetton and their Camel sponsors have signed a new sponsorship agreement for the 1993 season. If you're capable of driving with crossed fingers, here's the guy who's doing it right now. Martin Brundle, who took a while to get up on pace with his teammate Michael Schumacher, but really drove well in the most recent round at Canada. He is really hoping for a finish, preferably in the points. There you see Jean Alesi, who hopes to be the next man to catch up Martin Brundle, but meanwhile, Mika Hakkinen continues to rocket along on board with Jean Alesi. We'll take a quick time out and be back with more live coverage of the French Grand Prix. Just down the Loire River from Magny-Cours, the river is quiet, the river is quite shallow, at least it was for this weekend. The Loire will run much deeper following a very rainy Sunday here at Magny-Cours. Great drama as you watch live at the French Grand Prix at Magny-Cours. The rain tires are out in the pits of race leader Nigel Mansell. We have rain falling almost all the way around the racetrack. Mansell has slowed some 4 seconds on the last lap, and he may be preparing to stop for rain tires. Now it looks like he'll go by the pit entrance.
This, of course, is the time when the driver can make the choice himself. As you can see, the sky is very, very... There's the Pluie tire. You can see the Pluie on it, too. And it's a little warmer.
Andrew Marriott has more on the story from the pits.
Yes, well, all the mechanics were on red alert, and then Mansell went past, and they seemed to have relaxed a little bit, so he's obviously said something over the headset and doing a couple more laps, but it is raining quite hard in the pit lane, so, well, we'll just wait and see what happens, but expect Mansell to be in within the next 4 or 5 minutes. As I see a yellow flag wave, back to you.
Mika Hakkinen
has spun on the front straightaway, just coming off that final corner. Got on the power just a little too early.
And Brundle right with him again.
Right there to take him up.
Brundle, who he had just passed a few moments before, he did a terrific spin there. Maybe we'll see that again later on, but boy, oh boy, that must have been a pretty rapid spin right in front of the pit and God and everybody. Oh, here we go. Right round.
Kept it running.
First, kept it running. Must have pulled out in front of Brundle, too. So, the Finn rushing along there at a great speed. Nigel Mansell. Can't see much spray coming off the tyres yet, but you've got an idea of just how wet it is. The road looking very wet, and of course the red and yellow flag out.
Nope. Pass it again, does Nigel Mansell.
Ooh, be careful, Nine. Don't get too bold. Mind you, he can see the weather better than we can in the booth, quite honestly. He might see a big patch of blue coming, I don't know.
The gap back to the second place car of Riccardo Patrese is 21.3 seconds. There is Patrese, who really cannot afford to stop. Nigel really has the choice, and what he does will dictate what everyone else does.
Yeah, putting the power on coming out of that turn, we can see what it does to you. Very careful but firm application of power coming off those corners. As we say on the way back to the hotel, don't lift, never lift.
On to the curving rear straightaway. Reaching up, probably won't reach 180 miles an hour under these conditions.
But still, you can see, now you can see the thing lifting water off the track, and that's one of the Ligiers. I think it's Boutsen.
Yep, Boutsen has gone around and he stalled the car. Now this is red flag material.
Boutsen's going to get out.
He is right. Well, now he's off the racing line, and they might get it cleared. Nice job by the corner workers.
He's going to run over that.
Without power.
10-person power going to run over the old corner worker. Now they're going to start going against the traffic. This should be exciting because there's a chicane just up the road there.
They had the pit lane. The pit lane was available.
Now they blocked the pit lane as well. That's terrific. Doing a good job here. See, here's Oliver Gruard again, and now on the right is
J.J. Leto.
J.J. Leto.
Nothing like a few raindrops to make things exciting. Oh, Gruard almost driven off the racetrack.
Oh! And they touch there, and that spins Leto around. Spun Gruard round, but not Leto. J.J. got away with that.
There is Boutsen being pushed into the pit lane.
Backing into the pit lane. So I guess that's his race done. Oh dear, very disappointing for Thierry, for Patricia, and of course for Guy Ligier, who we saw earlier on in the paddock. I used to race against old Guy back in the early 60s.
We mentioned that this is Ligier's home racetrack. One of the new rules that will go into effect next year is that once the season begins, you cannot test on any facility that will host a round of the championship. So what are you doing if you're Guy Ligier? You've spent gazillions of francs to build a new factory on this racetrack, and now you can't test on it.
Now there's Jean Alesi in third spot. Just look how he is pulled up on Riccardo Patrese in the second position car.
And we're getting noticeable splashes around the tires. It's getting very wet out there. Andrew Marriotta's in the pits.
Yeah, all the Williams mechanics have just got down on their knees. That's the position that they use to change wheels. They've got the air jack in their hand, and they are absolutely ready. And I'm not sure if Nigel's going to come in this lap.
He's coming now, Andrew.
Oh, yes, they are ready now. Mansell in now. Comes in really very slowly. Engine still revving. All the boys go to work. It's up on the jacks. And a good one. He's got the wets on. Out he goes. And excellent stop for Nigel Mansell and the Williams team.
Good one indeed. 7.5 seconds by my watch. That is good in dry conditions. That was absolutely terrific in the wet. Wow, Nigel Mansell. The Williams team has not had a great history of pit stop problems. Recall the lost wheel nut a couple of seasons ago that may have cost Nigel his championship.
Spray coming off the wheels there. It's certainly ready, but obviously Riccardo Patrese did not pull in on that lap to change his tyres, and he is being hounded. There's the Lotus. Am I right? That is... Is that Hakkinen?
That's the Benetton.
Benetton. Of
Martin Brundle. His teammate Michael Schumacher is out of the race. Good stop for the Benetton team. Oh, that's just for the audience.
Is it?
He had complete control at all times. He'll tell you. Now here comes Mika Hakkinen up behind. Remember, he had that spin. Brundle got by him. That's Pierluigi Martini in the Dallara Ferrari. Whew. We've had a little bit of everything except rabbits on the racetrack here in France. And if the hunt didn't go down well, we may have those before the day is out. Very wet now on the back side. You see the parapluie up in the grandstands.
Go, locking up the front there. Oh, don't flat spot those tyres. You only just put them on. You won't want that to happen. Mind you, not they'll flat spot too easy in the rain, of course. They do just skate across the top, not like a dry tyre that really will flat spot and then give you most awful vibration through the steering wheel until you change them again. Nigel crabbing through that last corner, second gear. There's Ukio Katayama in the Larousse.
He'll be out of it shortly. He's peeling it off.
Here's Patrese coming in. So now the interesting thing is Alesi going to stop? Because he's such a hero in the rain.
Down to Andrew Marriott.
He is having a little bit of a problem here. The engine is revving hard, but now they've got it off the jacks. And Riccardo goes off in a huge row, hangs the tail out, almost scatters the photographers, and he's away.
Longer stop, 8.8 seconds for Riccardo Patrese, and that will cost him precious time to his teammate. He was 23 seconds down when he began the stop. Now, even though they use tire warmers, these rain tires need to come up to temperature as well. There you see Katayama being pushed off.
There you see just how hard on that long lens there, that it is raining quite hard here. Look at the spray now being kicked up by these tires. Alesi still must be on slicks. We haven't seen him stop yet, have we?
I believe he is still on slicks. Tippy-toe. Alesi's father was quite an accomplished rally driver. I hope some of those skills were passed on. And look at the speed he's maintaining in these conditions.
Yeah, I mean, just...
Cole Montreal a couple of seasons ago when it rained and Ayrton Senna stayed out on slick tires and it worked. He managed to continue to lead the race until it dried out.
Right, this is the slippery bit, this chicane. Downhill run there, so you got no camber helping you.
Ooh, he gets through the toughest turns on the racetrack. You can see just how dark it's getting. This rain may last. We'll be back. More live from France coming up. Riding aboard with Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, still on slick, dry weather tires in what has become a driving rain here at Magny-Cours. Nigel Mansell Ricardo Patrese second, and Alesi does a donut.
Keeps the engine running though. He's well and truly on the grass. Can he get off there? Yeah.
He may have waited just that much too long for it to dry out. I don't think it's going to. A peek out of our announce position shows a solid gray overcast. This rain is here to stay, I fear.
With just a few laps left, he might as well bite the bullet and...
Another look from overhead at the spin.
This is coming off that Estoril curve. Pretty quick curves across the grass. Hits that service road there. Didn't seem to bounce the car around too much. That's the sort of thing that can do a bit of damage. Straight across the grass. It's his rally driver dad's blood coming out of him.
Let's get down to the pits and Andrew.
Yeah, we just had Hakkinen in the pits. It is still raining very hard here, so I think they'll be staying on those treaded tyres. No worry about that.
I think Alesi's going to want some.
Is that Comas?
I believe that's Olivier Griard's Tyrrell.
Okay.
He is shown as being well in arrears, 2 laps down. He is out of the race. By my reckoning, the remaining cars at this juncture, as you see Jean Alesi, Mansell, Patrese, Alesi, Brundle, Hakkinen, Herbert, and Comas. They are all on the lead lap.
Oh, he's not... Oh, he hasn't got there yet. Oh,
he's still not going in.
I think he thought he was going to go in. I think he got there too quick. I think he did mean to go in.
Didn't make the corner.
Whoa, and there goes the old...
Gianni Morbidelli.
Morbidelli skated around too.
Still in the race besides those on the lead lap.
Crazy! Into that Estoril corner again. Let's see if we can do it again. Do it properly this time.
This is where he went off.
Gene. No, whistles around Aircus.
A couple of puddles there.
The scary thing, I tell you what, you hit standing water, those skiddy tires, you're in big trouble.
Don't forget, coming up later tonight, Joe Morgan, John Miller, live baseball here on ESPN at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The Oakland A's and the Cleveland Indians. 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday night baseball here on ESPN. I can't explain what we're looking at, folks. Jean Alesi driving around on slick tires in a monsoon.
Well, I guess there's probably only 1 or 2 laps left to run.
We show 52 laps complete. I believe we've got lots of laps still to go here. We're scheduled for 72. In case you're wondering, Jean Alesi has a 5-second gap, or at least did last time around.
Well, he must be looking at the sky and seeing something different to what we're seeing. I guess he just thinks it's going to dry out, and he's going to keep hanging in there, and then as it dries out, he's going to be in the pound seats as everybody else does stop and change it, stop and change again. Nope, he's definitely, this is it. Getting used to it now.
We now figure approximately 15 laps to go in this race. There's the race leader, Nigel Mansell, and you can see from the rooster tails just how wet it is out there.
Time will start to have an effect on this race, of course, too, if it stays this wet, or if it gets any wetter and they slow up more.
Nigel Mansell, 1 hour, 12 minutes into the race.
And pretty firmly in command, 31-second lead over his teammate, Ricardo Patrese, who in turn is 17 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi.
Nigel set fast lap of the race, back on lap 37. Not much chance of him doing it again now with these conditions. Down into the 180 on the infield portion of the track.
A quick right-left chicane with that dip in the middle. A lot of side force through that normally, not so much in the rain, of course.
How's your driving style likely to change under these kinds of conditions?
Well, on some of the corners where they can, they will go around the outside. They won't stay on the line because...
Down to the pits quickly. Andrew has something.
Yeah, well, I'm just seeing Johnny Herbert leaving the pit, and he's been on slicks all that time. In fact, Lotus decided to keep their drivers out for a long time on slicks. Hakkinen had dropped, in fact, to 6th place, and Johnny will have dropped, I think, out of the top 6 there. So Lotus also staying on slicks. Also, Morbidelli just in on slicks and changing to wets. Back to you, Bob.
Well, apparently everyone taking that big risk. Tracy Hakkinen coming out. Here is Pierluigi Martini in the Dallara.
Wheels spinning there while the car was still up on the jack.
Crew doesn't appreciate that. Nigel Mansell going very, very delicately.
Now you see him going right around the outside of the corner there to stay off the normal dry line, which has got a lot of rubber and oil and other accoutrement on it. Obviously, when you come to chicanes and things like that, it's much more difficult to stay offline, but by and large in the wet, you're better off going the long way around the corner. So the only man left on slicks now has got to be this guy here, John Alesi in the Ferrari.
We have had a little of everything here today. We have had rain, we have had dry, we have had a red flag, we have had what the French call le grand carambolage in the hairpin on the very first lap that knocked world champion Ayrton Senna out of the race. We are not through yet, folks. More drama at the Grand Prix of France. You see Jean Alesi leaving an absolutely inundated pit lane. He almost spun the car again in the pits, got to his pit, stalled the engine. They got the rain tires on. They also had to refire the car, and he's back out. But that was a long and very costly pit stop.
Yeah, it came into the pits, nearly sideswiped the tire barrier on the way in, and then, as you say, stalled on the way out. So that was a long and costly stop for Jean Alesi. Probably stayed out just a bit too long on those slick tires. As we went to commercial there, you could see the sort of view he was getting. Not very good, quite honestly, at the moment. Ooh, taking a long way around there.
56 laps are complete. The order is Nigel Mansell, Riccardo Patrese 33 seconds back. Another 29 seconds to this man, Jean Alesi, but that will change when he crosses the start-finish line. He's much further behind now. 10 seconds back to Martin Brundle. Eric Comas, 45 seconds in the rear. And then in the 6th and final points-paying position, Mika Hakkinen. Andrew Marriott called it exactly right. Johnny Herbert dropped out of the top 6.
Mika Hakkinen, who's had such a good afternoon, by and large about to be lapped by Nigel Mansell as we go back to the second-place car of Riccardo Patrese.
What a day for Williams-Renault. They are running first and second, which seems to be their habit this year. After a little bit of a blip at Monaco and then in Canada, both of which they failed to win. And in Canada, of course, neither Williams-Renault finished. Mansell crashed and Patrese broke. But they're having all things their way here in France. Last year, Nigel Mansell won the race, as he appears to be on his way to doing again this year. Don't forget, coming up, IndyCar coverage coming up following the action here in Magny-Cours. From Loudon, New Hampshire, the New England 200 at 12:30 p.m. live. Paul Page and the rest of the gang there for the first visit of the Indy cars to the 1.058-mile four-turn banked oval at Loudon, New Hampshire. Should be a great race. Michael Andretti lapping at impossible speeds, about 170 miles an hour, as I recall. Meanwhile, Riccardo Patrese continues as Nigel Mansell's aide-de-camp here, running in second place.
There's no doubt about those Indy cars on those mile ovals or something else. I was down at turn 1 and 2 last week at Milwaukee watching them mix it up there. Tremendous racing. This racing here has been pretty exciting this afternoon too. A tremendous mix-up. Great shuffling in the field as we watch Nigel Mansell now. That was a good camera cut. Go through the field.
Nigel now giving a face full of spray to one of the Dallaras.
I think, is that later or is that Pierluigi? Spray. A big problem here this afternoon now. John Alesi opted to stay out for a long time. There we see Martin Brundle in the remaining Benetton Ford.
He is now
third
up to
spot.
third. That's right. He got by Jean Alesi after that long and costly Ferrari pit stop. It was Mansell, Patrese, Brundle, Alesi 20 seconds behind Brundle.
Getting right to the edge of the road there, but going around the outside of that long Estoril turn. Now he's coming up on a couple of cars he wants to get between himself and Jean Alesi. That's Gianni Morbidelli and Pierluigi Martini in the Dallara. Both of these cars he's lapping, of course.
Martin Brundle up into third place, hoping to pick up those first Grand Prix points of the season, but getting a face full of spray, they'll have to be very careful. Rocketing through the French countryside, Martin Brundle, who has gotten around the Dallara Pierluigi Martini, and has also gotten by Mika Hakkinen, and runs in third place behind Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese as the Grand Prix of France is into its waning laps. Officials can't really tell us exactly how many laps there are to go, but we'll know the checkered flag when we see it. There's Gianni Morbidelli in the black and yellow car, being chased down by Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, who lost third place on a long pit stop when he stalled.
John Alesi, a man in a hurry now, because just in front of Gianni Morbidelli is Martin Brundle, who's running in third spot, a position that Jean Alesi wants to get. Gets around Morbidelli, lets him through as they come into the chicane just prior to the last turn here onto the pit straight. And there, just going under the bridge, is Martin Brundle. That is the cloud of spray just disappearing. So Alesi has to make up a few seconds yet to catch, 13 seconds, in fact, to catch Martin Brundle.
Let's get a report from Andrew Marriott now in the pits.
I'm certain it's going to be 9 more laps to go. I'm just looking at the Williams pit board of both Riccardo and Nigel, and that's what's being shown there. And the Williams team don't get things like this wrong, as Andrea De Cesaris just walks in and past me.
Andrea De Cesaris is done for Ken Tyrrell's team for the day.
Disappointing time the Tyrrells had here. They've got the Ilmor V10 engine. They've been very up and down this year. They've had some jolly good races, and here's one that obviously has not been so good for them. Grouillard jumping the start, stop and go penalty, and getting stuck in the sand in the end, that we believe. Martin Brundle running in third spot in the Ford V8 engined Benetton car. Very, very quick car, this. Everybody likes the engine a lot. A very drivable engine, and obviously a very drivable car. Both he and Schumacher have turned in some electrifying performances this year. Schumacher somewhat outshining Brundle, but Brundle today doing the business. Looks like a third spot for him, and Schumacher, of course, parked at the side of the route.
Amazing the speeds these cars can maintain despite these treacherous conditions. It continues to rain at Magny-Cours. We'll take a quick time out and be right back.
Well, as you can see, it's rather difficult getting a shot of this Ferrari down here because the garage gates have been pulled down, and the Ferrari are not a happy team here. Jean Alesi's engine absolutely exploded and destroyed itself, and we had a lot of smoke in the pits, a lot of oil down where the car was, but Jean Alesi after that really superb. If Perry Drive is out of the race for certain.
Well, that'll promote this guy here, Eric Comas, in the Ligier, based here at Magny-Cours. That'll put him into fourth spot. Mika Hakkinen in the Lotus will be sixth, and Johnny Herbert fifth, and Johnny Herbert should pick up that final point, depending on how many laps we've got left in this race, which is probably about 7 now. There's our leader, Nigel Mansell, down the pit lane, wiping his face, looking over rather anxiously at the pits. I don't think he doesn't have to look anxious. He's got a 35-second lead on his own teammate.
Probably would just as soon pull over and finish this puppy. Mansell leads Patrese by 35, as David mentioned. Martin Brundle another 44 seconds behind Patrese. Then Eric Comas in fourth, a lap down, followed by Mika Hakkinen, Johnny Herbert, Michele Alboreto, Gianni Morbidelli, J.J. Leto, and Pierluigi Martini. Tough break for Jean Alesi, who drove so valiantly, staying on the dry tires as the rain fell heavier and heavier, hoping that it would stop, but it did not, and finally the engine let go. Tough day for a Ferrari, but a great day for Ligier. Eric Comas will have, it would appear, his highest Grand Prix finish ever.
Bad day for Thierry Boutsen, his teammate, who was leading him throughout this event until he finally spun on those slick tires just when it started to rain. spun in front of the pits, stalled it, and had to be ignominiously pushed off the track. So Thierry won't be a happy man again, not very happy with the team and the year in general. Very, very disappointing for him. I think he was hoping for such big things from the Renault engine, Ligier, and it just doesn't seem to be working out like it should do.
Just a handful of laps remaining as some of the people begin to head for the exits. You really have to be a fan of the sport to come to Manicourt today, given the conditions, the truckers' blockade going on outside. Nigel getting a little loose there.
Well, I think a lot of that's the oil that came out of Elise's car when he blew up just a couple laps ago with, what, we've got 6 left to go now in the race?
6 laps remaining for Nigel Mansell. I think Alesi did drop a bit of oil out there. They're in the pits. Benetton team. They're looking pretty glum right now, but their man is still out there. Martin Brundle looks to be on his way to a 3rd place finish, and I'm sure he'd be glad to stay out there all day if he'd get those points.
Nothing's over till it's over in racing, but it looks as if Nigel Mansell is on his way to collecting yet another 10 points, which would give him 68 in the championship. And, of course, the man who everybody in the world is watching, his immediate competitor, Senna, still languishing on 18, 50 points behind.
There you see the Para de Pluie rather than Parasol. Not much sol here in otherwise sunny Manicourt this weekend. Give those folks some credit. They paid a lot of money. There you see officials looking on in the Williams-Renault pit. Frank Williams watching the monitor closely. Ricardo Patrese tippy-toeing around, getting very, very bad out there.
Around that hairpin that claimed Senna and ultimately claimed Schumacher. Schumacher had 2 goes at it this week and managed to knock himself out on the 2nd time fairly comprehensively. As Patrese goes through that, what they call the Nürburgring, which is that right-left. This is the 180. Very tight, very slippery in conditions like this, I imagine. Very smooth surface here. In fact, Gerhard Berger actually had the gall to say he thought it was too smooth, which, coming from a racing driver, is the most extraordinary thing to say. This is the Imola chicane, which is a right-left. They're not really chicanes. These are fast corners, especially in the dry. Put a lot of load on the car and a lot of load on the driver. This is a very, very tiring circuit to drive at.
3 weeks ago in Montreal, we saw a variety of firsts and equal bests. Michael Schumacher equaled his best Grand Prix performance ever with 2nd. Carl Wendlinger with a 4th at his best ever. We've already mentioned Eric Komas. If he can hold on to 4th place, it'll be his best finish ever. And for Martin Brundle, whose best was a 4th. He actually finished 2nd in the Detroit Grand Prix years ago, but his car was disqualified for a technical infraction. So Martin Brundle en route to his best ever GP performance today, it would appear. 4 laps remaining for this man, Nigel Mansell.
Those big rain tires, if FISA have their way, they won't be that big next year. Pumping literally hundreds of gallons of water a minute off this track and spreading it into the atmosphere.
For Nigel, it would be, if he earns it, career victory number 27, matching Jackie Stewart as winningest British Grand Prix driver ever. And a lot of folks are wondering what Nigel Mansell's plans are if he does win the World Championship this year. Will he come back to Frank Williams' team, or will he consider his career complete and hang it up like he did 2 years ago before being enticed back into the cockpit?
Well, of course, the only thing is that he will be offered just such huge money that it would be tremendously hard to turn it down. Obviously, it's nice to retire at the top, and he certainly would be able to retire with honor, with obviously a huge amount of wins, a very impressive record behind him. But, boy, oh boy, you know, when you think of that 15 or 16 million dollars he could be offered as a salary for 1993, kind of hard to turn that down, especially if you want to live in an expensive town like Clearwater.
He'll make almost as much as you do, eh, partner?
Well, it's not that much.
Nigel Mansell.
Lots of speculation, as you said earlier on, around this team, too. I mean, all sorts of people hanging around. Alan Prost, very much on the list of Renault to drive their engine. They really want a Frenchman to win in this car. Senna on the scout, not very happy with his McLaren Honda at the moment. And, of course, he's always high on people's list of drivers. And, of course, the two Americans, Michael Andretti and Al Unser Jr., also on people's lips for Grand Prix racing. So, a lot of interesting combinations out there.
There is Roseanne Mansell. It's never easy. They also serve who only stand and wait. She has seen her husband do more than his share of winning this year, possibly ready to pick up his 6th victory in 8 races.
Of course, when he gets, if he wins this race, that'll put him on 27, equal to Jackie Stewart as the best British driver. It'll also put him in a very strong 3rd spot behind Alan Prost with 44 wins, and of course Ayrton Senna with 34. And the way Nigel's going this year, quite frankly, he could win every race for the rest of the year, which would eclipse Ayrton Senna's current second place standing in the World Championship. So, I mean, he could be in for the most devastating year for everybody else.
Well, we've seen in just the last few seasons how quickly the record books can be revamped when you have a team dominator. Alain Prost with the McLaren, first the McLaren Porsche, then the McLaren Honda, first caught Jackie Stewart and then absolutely romped from 27 to 44 wins. Same for Ayrton Senna, came from about 15 to 34 very quickly by dominating a season. Now Nigel Mansell ready to do the same. And that is the crux of next year's driver lineup. 3 top drivers looking for very few available seats with the very top teams. Williams' team would probably be first on anybody's list. McLaren, perhaps even Ferrari.
And Benetton, don't forget. But I don't know that the Benetton is just quite that tempting enough for someone like Alan Prost or Nigel Mansell.
Nigel Mansell will have 1 lap to go next time around. And high above, we see him setting up a wake like a submarine.
That corner there is called the Chateau d'Eau, which I guess translates into Waterhouse, which just right at the moment seems like a pretty good description. There you see him offline, and you see that oil. It goes in wide on the left and wide on the right. There's that blue and red oil there from Alesi's car.
Last lap, we believe. At the rate this race has been going down, we can't be sure of anything. But it would appear that Nigel Mansell has 1 lap to go toward that 27th victory. We won't give it to him quite yet. Make what we call...
No, because if you remember Canada last year, and I told him not to wave on the last lap, just a few seconds later, the thing sputtered to a halt. So Nigel certainly, of all people, won't be counting this one out till he sees that checkered flag. Taking it nice and steady, though. Down the hairpin.
You had a quick look at the flag stand there. 1 lap to go being shown to the drivers behind Nigel. So I think we can safely anticipate at this point that the checkered flag awaits Nigel.
Roseanne certainly hopes so. God, I'll be glad when this is over, she's saying to herself.
Parents of 3 great-looking kids, Greg, Leo, and Chloe. Nigel Mansell through the uphill right and left-hander. Frank Williams just about ready to breathe the sigh of relief that Frank Williams will not breathe until both of his cars are home safe. But at this point, it looks like a 1-2 finish for Team Willie, as Frank Williams likes to call it. The checkered flag is out, it waves, and it is over. The first half of the 1992 Formula One World Championship is complete. Nigel Mansell will finish the first half with an enormous lead in the points. His teammate Riccardo Patrese will stay close, and finally that grin breaks out on Frank Williams' face. Red 5, Nigel Mansell with his 6th win in 8 races, 27th career victory. The rest of the field filing through. Riccardo Patrese 44.5 seconds down at the finish from Michele Alboretto's footwork Honda Mugen going through. Nigel on the backstretch, waving to the crowd. And he is always a very popular winner. Frank Williams will accept the plaudits for his team. We'll be back with more from France.
The time has come to bid adieu to the Loire Valley. It would be fun to leave by canal boat, but the British Isles are calling, and so we must fly. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of France has been brought to you by New Scalpicin, the scalp medicine that stops scalp itch, helps prevent flaking, too.
As Nigel Mansell completes his victory lap, here's a look at our final results of the Grand Prix of France. Nigel Mansell by 46.4 seconds officially over Riccardo Patrese. Martin Brundle with his best ever Grand Prix finish in third for the Benetton team. Mika Hakkinen in the new Lotus, followed by Eric Comas, his best finish ever. And Johnny Herbert in the sixth and final points-paying position in the Lotus Ford, followed by Michele Alboreto in seventh, Gianni Morbidelli eighth, J.J. Leto ninth, Pierluigi Martini in 10th, and Olivier Griard will rank in the 11th position, even though he did not finish the race. Fast lap of the race went to Nigel Mansell. Points as a result of today's race show Nigel way out in front of Riccardo Patrese. Michael Schumacher was out of the race, and he remains in third place over Ayrton Senna, who also did not finish. Gerhard Berger did not finish. Jonah Lacey did not finish. In the Constructors' Championship, Williams-Renault now with a massive lead, 100-36 over McLaren Honda. Benetton Ford right there to battle with the McLaren boys for second place. Don't forget, coming up right after our broadcast, the Indy cars from the 1 Mile Oval at New Hampshire International Speedway, the New England 200, coming up live in just a few minutes. It has been about the most diverse and entertaining race we could imagine here in France this weekend. We hope you'll join us for the next round of the championship, the Grand Prix of Britain, at 8:50 a.m. Eastern Time. So long from France.